Didda, Pir welcome hui imeth out of the Kroeder. You may recall that at the end of last week's programme I asked you to speculate on how young the youngest Cornish speaker in Cornwall might be and how old the oldest speaker might be. Well, this week you're going to find out. I think the youngest, or certainly one of the youngest, may be my son Gowan. His second birthday was last Saturday, and here's a short extract of the kind of Cornish he speaks. You hen a da?
Da.
Didda, Pir welcome hui imeth out of the Kroeder. You may recall that at the end of last week's programme I asked you to speculate on how young the youngest Cornish speaker in Cornwall might be and how old the oldest speaker might be. Well, this week you're going to find out. I think the youngest, or certainly one of the youngest, may be my son Gowan. His second birthday was last Saturday, and here's a short extract of the kind of Cornish he speaks. You hen a da?
Da.
Da.
Hey.
Byddi hemi hanaf te. Tum.
Tum.
Tum. To tell the truth, he seems to speak about 3% Cornish, 11% English, and the remainder Martian at the moment, but no doubt both his English and his Cornish will improve in time. I know that there is a 4-year-old girl, Selina George, who speaks not only Cornish, but also Breton and French, as well as English. She's Ken George's daughter. Rather extraordinary family, that. And of course there are lots of other young people learning Cornish. Some of them in my Cornish class at Poole School. I spoke to them the other day to ask them about why they joined the Cornish class. Desda, Purity.
Sarah Offrey.
Hafaf Guinness.
In Pointer.
Desda, Purity.
Louise Offrey.
Hafaf Guinness.
In Pointer.
Midinda,
Linda.
Purity.
Lisa Offrey.
Hafaf Guinness.
In Pointer.
Kroghen. Sarah, Louise, Lisa. You're all members of my Cornish class in school. Why did you decide to join my little group to learn Cornish? Any ideas? Lisa?
It sounded totally interesting compared to French and English. Because not very many people speak the Cornish language, and as I was born down in Cornwall, I was pretty much in most annual group wasn't going too well. There wasn't that many sort of going, so we thought we'd put right.
That's very kind of you, Kroghen also. Are you good at languages?
French, yes, English quite, but Cornish is better now.
So, same reason for you?
Just about, yes. I like doing languages. I'm not sure I'm very good at them, but I...
You may recall that at the end of last week's programme I asked you to speculate on how young the youngest Cornish speaker in Cornwall might be and how old the oldest speaker might be. Well, this week you're going to find out. I think the youngest, or certainly one of the youngest, may be my son Gowan. His second birthday was last Saturday, and here's a short extract of the kind of Cornish he speaks. You hen a da?
Da.
Da.
Hey.
Byddi hemi hanaf te. Tum.
Tum.
Tum. To tell the truth, he seems to speak about 3% Cornish, 11% English, and the remainder Martian at the moment, but no doubt both his English and his Cornish will improve in time. I know that there is a 4-year-old girl, Selina George, who speaks not only Cornish, but also Breton and French, as well as English. She's Ken George's daughter. Rather extraordinary family, that. And of course there are lots of other young people learning Cornish. Some of them in my Cornish class at Poole School. I spoke to them the other day to ask them about why they joined the Cornish class. Desda, Purity.
Sarah Offrey.
Hafaf Guinness.
In Pointer.
Desda, Purity.
Louise Offrey.
Hafaf Guinness.
In Pointer.
Midinda,
Midinda.
Purity.
Lisa Offrey.
Hafaf Guinness G.
In Pointer.
Kroghen. Sarah, Louise, Lisa. You're all members of my Cornish class in school. Why did you decide to join my little group to learn Cornish? Any ideas? Lisa?
It sounded totally interesting compared to French and English, because not very many people stick to the Cornish language, and as I was born down in Cornwall, I thought it might be nice, and your group wasn't going too well. There wasn't that many sort of going, so we thought we'd help you out.
That's very kind of you. Forgive us there. Are you good at languages?
French, yes. English, quite. But Cornish will get in there.
Sarah, same reasons for you?
Just about, yes. I like doing languages. I'm not sure I'm very good at them, but I enjoy it.
Yeah. Louise, do you find it hard learning Cornish? Do you find it harder than French, for example?
Well, it's about the same as French, really. I prefer learning Cornish because, like, I'm Cornish, and it's like carrying on speaking Cornish, and it's like, because not many people do anymore.
My thanks to Sarah, Louise and Lisa from Poole School. I think the oldest speaker of Cornish in Cornwall is probably Francis Hosking, who has been in my evening class at Penzance for the past 7 weeks. Now, there may be somebody older speaking Cornish. If so, I'd be very pleased to hear from you. But Francis is 79, and I asked him whether he didn't think that 79 was rather a ripe old age to be starting a new venture like learning a new language like Cornish.
Well, I've always been interested in the names of places in Cornwall and what they mean, and I think it's silly to have a thing like a house that we had that we went into that had a stupid by sea or something like that. I think it's much better to put it in Cornish. And then I wanted to get a name which meant what it was, and I went to Peter Poole in that time actually to get the translation of this particular house I'm in now, which I came to as Osreen.
Now, in fact, you've been going long enough to know the founding fathers of the modern revival, the people who through the 20s and 30s and 40s had such an influence. You have a letter, in fact, from Robert Morton Nance, don't you?
Yes, I like.
Who is considered as the father, really, after Henry Jenner, of the modern Cornish revival. What was your letter about?
Well, I wrote him, and then Morton Nance wrote me on the 20th of March 1939. I'm afraid I must have posted an empty envelope as I found this after post time. Dear Mr. Hosking, I'd like to read it, shall I? There are 2 words, both spelt gwell, one of which means view or sight, whilst the other means field. It is the latter that is common as a field name, usually spelt gweel, but sometimes gull and sometimes gold. I don't think it likely that Gwellview would ever be used as a place name, as it is completely a comparatively new idea to think of a view of importance enough to name a place, not for what it is, but for what can be seen from it. Still, Gwell and More is perfectly good Cornish, though no place was ever so named when Cornish was still the language of the land, as far as I know. Incidentally, in my trips to Brittany, in the Parasgiric area, I came across a house over there called Gwell and More. Bryn Mawr is a very favourite Welsh name for a house meaning sea hill. In Cornish it would be Bronmore, with only 1 letter's difference. Names like this are generally given because of some association with them, in which case there would be no idea of taking it seriously as a description wherever the house might be. But with a new Cornish name one does expect some suitability, and Sheehan Alls does seem to be a bit far-fetched. In the middle of Goval, there is a house called Shanalls or Sheehanalls, it's pronounced Shanalls by the people that don't know, in Goval, in the middle of Goval, unless it is at least on a stiff slope. Yours very truly, R. Morton Nance. Quite interesting.
Did you ever meet Morton Nance?
No, I never met him.
No.
Incidentally, in connection with these names, I'm just reading Charles Henderson's Cornish History book. I borrowed it from the library. It's taken me a long time to do it. It's heavy reading, but last night I was reading a chapter on it with the woodland stories, places, all the woods in Cornwall. And that was very interesting to see the names of farms that I've known and places I've known all over Cornwall, particularly in West Cornwall, with the names which tie up, and this is where the Cornish names come to it, which help.
Of course, they're not always obvious, the wood ones, because the word course
Yeah.
can come out as in quite or koi, pencois,
Yeah.
penquite,
That's right.
penquit, all sorts of
This is the
strange
thing which was
variations.
interesting to read them.
Now, at the age of 79,
Mhm.
I have to ask you frankly, do you find it difficult to learn Cornish?
Well, I find it difficult because I can't put the necessary time to it. I'm retired, but getting organised to a regular a regular core, getting down to it is rather difficult. It's
You learnt some French in your youth, didn't
oh
you?
yes, I learned French. I was able to speak French. I found that if I could be in France for a month, I think I could speak it. But the thing is, you've lost your vocabulary. I can read it and understand it. I used to read the Bible a bit when in French. I got hold of that when I was studying French for matric in 1925. That helped a lot.
Now, I've been talking to some of my pupils in school here that I teach Cornish to. We don't actually teach it as part of the timetable. I would very much like to, of course. They're not sure themselves. How do you feel about it? Do you think there is a future for Cornish in Cornish schools? Should it be part of our curriculum?
I would like to see it there myself. I was even up at Truro School last week at a governor's meeting there, talking to one or two of them up there.
You're a governor?
Yes, governor of the school up there, and seeing whether they could do anything. I didn't put it on the agenda or make a motion about it, but talking about it generally, I would think there's a case for doing it. I think that we ought to not to allow a Cornish language to die out as it has very largely done now, but there seems to be quite a lot of interest in it, and it does help you to know where you are and see names on places which mean something, although all these horrid mutations that you tell us about but the spelling is very different to what they're really supposed to be.
It does make life a bit hard sometimes, doesn't it? Well, thank you very much indeed. Meras. To the best of my knowledge, I think at the age of 79, you're certainly the oldest Cornish speaker, even though it's not a great deal of Cornish yet, in Cornwall, though maybe somebody else will tell us different.
I've only done 7 weeks of classes yet, and it's taking me time. I find the vocabulary is very difficult, but although you can tie up some words, for instance, you say good morning is metinsda,
Mitinda,
which is the same as matin in French.
That's right, very similar, yes.
And it's interesting to tie up some of the Cornish words with the language, either Latin or French.
With
I
other
did
languages,
Latin years ago, of course.
Well, fenester is a window, which is from
fenestre.
the Romans. I guess because Cornishmen didn't have windows till the Romans came and told them about them.
That's what they did. And then the Frenchmen call them fenêtre.
That's right, same word.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much indeed, Francis, and I'll see you in my evening class next week.
I hope so. No star, no.
No star, yeah. Hello, Francis Hosking, din an nonje Katrigans Bluth, the Lathus agenzo Diski Kernewek. Francis Hosking of Marazion, who at the age of 79 recently began learning Cornish. So it's never too late, you see. And incidentally, on learning Cornish, I've had some letters asking for further details of who to contact. If you're interested in Cornish classes, or in learning Cornish by correspondence, or in any other aspect of the Cornish language, you should write to the Secretary of the Cornish Language Board, whose name is Wella Brown, W-E-L-L-A, Brown, Wella Brown, 9 Frith Road, Saltash, 9 Frith Road, Saltash. And Wella's telephone number is Saltash Dow Seth 3 2273. Saltash 2273. Well, that's all for this week. Cheerio until next week. God be with you. Du genefui. Du genefui.